Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I have the best job ever. I love the work that I get to do in this world. I get to bring love to all of you. I get to encourage you. I get to help you connect with the wisdom of your soul and the inspiration of your heart. And you can learn more about what I do and my offerings at my website, illuminating-souls.com. But just to give you a little preview, I facilitate one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And about my classes, I want you to know that every month or 6 weeks I offer something new. So there's always something interesting that you can jump into. I just launched my new cycle of a class called The Power of Your Voice, which is designed to help you come into your authentic voice, who you are as a messenger, a teacher, a storyteller. And I'm not sure yet what the angels and I will be cooking up for you in November and December, but I'm sure something wonderful is in the works. So I invite you to visit me at my website, and you can also sign up for my mailing list there, and you'll find out about all the things that I offer. And you can also visit me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, both at Illuminating Souls. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you rest. Now, there are different ways you can use this podcast. I originally designed it to be a sleep podcast because I'm someone who uses a sleep podcast every night to help me transition from wake to sleep. And so if you are going to use this as a sleep podcast, my recommendation is you curl up in bed, cozy up, snuggle in whatever way serves you best. I listen to my sleep podcasts on my earphones, and I typically will turn the volume down lower than I usually would if I were listening to an audiobook in my waking hours, but I keep it turned down a little bit, so I have to reach a little bit further for the narrative. Because in doing so, it creates a bridge for me to drift off. Now, that's what works for me. Give yourself some experiences to discover what works best for you. I also love using sleep podcasts for those 3 a.m. wake-up calls when my body is tired but my mind is wide awake. And I put on a sleep podcast to help redirect my consciousness so that it can drift back off to sleep. There's several sleep podcasts that I listen to, including one of my favorites right now, which is The Sleepy Bookshelf, where the narrator, I think her name is Elizabeth, I should know after all of this time, reads different books. They just finished with Little Women, And the next one they're going to be reading is The Velveteen Rabbit, which I don't recall ever having read, so I'm looking forward to that. I also listen to this sleep podcast, my own sleep podcast, to help me fall asleep. I love getting to receive the love of the angels, and it really helps me drift off. So I can report back that my own podcast also works for me. Another way that you can use this sleep podcast is during the day. I know many of you do this. You listen while you're working, you can listen while you're commuting or taking your walk or making dinner, and I'll just hopefully be good company for you. You'll get in a little bit of that angel love, which is always a good thing, and hopefully I can keep you amused with a story or two. You know, I just love getting to share with you in this way. I miss the intimacy of wandering conversations. You know, the kind that happen when you spend the day with someone and you wander in and out of all kinds of topics and themes, and it brings a sense of intimacy and connection. And I feel in some ways that this podcast has turned into that. I get to share with you snippets of my life, and I read to you stories that I appreciate, or we wander through old publications together. And hopefully this is helping to create a sense of intimacy within you as well. Because more often than not, my recollections and my stories will spark something for you about your own path. So it is my pleasure and my blessing to be here with you now. As I record this, it is early morning on a weekday, and the sun hasn't come up yet, and things are still quiet. We'll see if they stay that way. We may hear from my neighbor's chickens or from the freeway. That's about a mile away from here. So we'll see what happens, but I am feeling the love flowing through. And yes, I am here underneath the blanket fort. So those of you who listen, you know that I have this cozy blanket that I pull over the monitor of my computer and over my head and create a blanket fort. It helps to dampen the sound, but it also creates a sanctuary of sorts. And I love coming into the blanket fort. I just am realizing I have always been someone who loves pulling the blankets over my head. I know that that's often used as a metaphor for escaping life and an unhealthy life choice. But you know, I want to reclaim the joy of pulling blankets over our heads and curling up, right? Reading underneath the blankets with a flashlight. It's like our own secret little world. So I'm here in the blanket fort. And if you want to pull the blankets over your head as well, I invite you to join me here. It's lovely under here. And the angels are here as well. I feel the love pouring in, and right now it feels like there is a lightness of spirit, which is so lovely. And I'm grateful to be able to share it with you. So how about if I call the angels in now, even though they're already here? I love the ritual of inviting them forward. And just so you know, you can invite them forward too. I do not have the angels on an exclusive retainer. They are here for you. So any time of the day or night, all you have to do is say, hey, angels, You are welcome to bring that forward in a more poetic, prayerful way, but it's not necessary. Just say, angels, will you join me here? Will you be here? Will you bring me signs of magic and love? So I invite you to take a deep breath in and release as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And as I speak these words, I am aware that you are inviting us into this sanctuary of love. And angels, I am so deeply grateful for this opportunity to awaken more fully to your beautiful presence. And I am grateful to be here in this beautiful sanctuary with our beloveds who are listening with me right now. And angels, I ask that you clear our collective energy fields through the heart of God and sending healing light through all dimensions of time. And angels, I ask that you help to infuse into each of us a lightness of spirit, helping us remember who we are as divine beings in human form, bringing to each of us sparks of inspiration, soul whispers, and beautiful portals of opportunity that will bring us deep joy and authentic fulfillment. So, dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and out, allowing the waves of love and light to envelop you, to bring to you comfort, to help you replenish and restore, inviting your body to receive this love, sending blessings of light to your beautiful body just as it exists right now. Breathing this love into every cell of your body, every thought in your mind, and every emotion in your heart. You, my friend, you are a blessing in this world. You are precious, and this world is better because you are here. So take a deep breath in and allow your angels to bring this love to you now. You know, divine love is such a powerful experience to receive. And I know it can be frustrating sometimes if you perceive that you cannot feel it or know that it is here other than the words that I share. But as we talked about in the last podcast, your imagination is a powerful gateway to connect with this love. The place where your imagination resides in consciousness overlaps a bit with divine guidance. It's not one and the same, but they share some territory. And so, if you will imagine that the ultimate, most loving presence in the universe is sending love to you now, a love that exists beyond time and space. A love that has nothing to do with what you've done today or what your body looks like or the value you place upon your achievements or your challenges. As I've shared before, divine love has much more in common with the sun than it does with our human expression of love. Because as much as we like to think we have the capacity to love unconditionally, it is often conditional, not in a dark and terrible way, but as humans, we experience a bell curve of loving, whereas the sun is the sun is the sun. Regardless of who or what is present, the sun is the sun. Good person, bad person, loving person, not loving person. The sun is the sun, and it shines without prejudice. And if this is the sun, how could God's love be any less than the sun? Divine love it exists. It is a frequency of this universe that always is. And through this exploration that we do together in our episodes, we are helping you learn to attune to this frequency, this broadcast, this vibration of divine love that is always available and here for you. It exists. Whether you're aware of it or not, it is. Isn't that wonderful news? So take a breath in and you bathe in this beautiful love the way a cat might bathe in the shaft of sun coming in through a window on a summer's day. You bathe in this broadcast of love, even if you're not sure you are feeling it or receiving it. Just believe for the next few minutes that it is here with you and for you, as your angels come together to amplify this divine love in service to all you are navigating in your life right now. The angels know what you are moving through. They know the intimacy of your heart. And so as you come into this place of receptivity and rest, they are bringing this love to you now, calibrated for you. So yes, divine love is divine love, and it also can be imbued with intention to support each one of us. So the frequency of light and wisdom and love that I might receive might be slightly different than what you receive, because perhaps right now what I am craving is inspiration. And perhaps what you are craving is compassion, right? Each of us is on our own unique path. It shifts from day to day, from hour to hour. And this divine love is mutable and can always and forever meet you where you are. So just take a breath in and receive. Your angels are with you now. They have such deep, abiding love for you. They are here to help you connect with the beauty of your authentic self as you become more aware of the wholeness of you as a beloved of this universe. I affirm that goodness is flowing to you now. That sparks of inspiration are germinating for you. And that new opportunities, new joys are flowing to you. This world can be a beautiful place. There's always beauty to discover in this world. I know there are times the world is a dumpster fire as well, so I'm not being all Pollyanna about it. But each day we can choose into experiencing the magic and the beauty, even if it's only for 5 minutes at a time. Whether it is a butterfly that crosses your path, or if the sky is a particular shade of blue, or even as I experienced the other night when I looked up and I gasped because the stars were so beautiful. I invite you to set your intention each day to experience some of the beauty of this world. It will help you reconnect and remember your own divine origins and to see the beauty and the magic in you as well. Because you are magical and you are glorious. And I am so grateful I get to be the one to help you remember that right now. So, my beautiful friend, I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in. Receive the love that is cascading to you. And if sleep is your intention, then allow yourself to drift off whenever you are ready and you rest and replenish, and your angels will be with you. And while you do, I'm going to tell you a story. So for our story tonight, I'm laughing because this is going to be a wild and woolly exploration. We are going to be exploring the diet culture of the late 60s and 1970s. Now, before you groan, bear with me. We're going to have fun with this. I know it was a hard time for so many of us, but I don't know. It also makes me laugh. And this is inspired by a couple of different themes for podcasts. One was the Richard Simmons podcast that I did a few weeks ago. I heard from many of you that you deeply resonated with the conversation because what I shared mirrored your own experiences. And also some of the old Jewish cookbooks I have been going through, the recipe books, the dietetic recipes that I remember so well. So I am not planning on this being dark or sad. I am intending to recollect in a way that we can just laugh at the absurdity of it all together. So I was born in 1962. I first became aware of being a larger sized little girl than other little girls when I was 5 years old. And I will not go into that story right now, but suffice it to say that for 55 years of my life, for sure, I have had an awareness of my size. And I first went to Weight Watchers when I was 7 years old. So that would be 1969. And my mom, I would not say my mom was overweight, but back in those days, she would have been considered overweight. Now she would be considered perfectly healthy and normal. But, things were different back then. And so my mom also had been slightly plus sized when she was a girl and a teenager. And so she definitely had this awareness about dieting and weight and my size, because both of my siblings were normal sized, but I was plus sized, right? I had to shop in the chubby girls shops. Isn't that just a horrible word for it? So I was introduced to the concept of the diet culture when I was very young. So let's set the stage, shall we? So in the late 60s, artificial sweeteners came on the scene, right? Saccharin, which was then created as Sweet and Low. Those were a big thing back then. How many of you remember those pink little packets of Sweet and Low? And if you didn't grow up then, you probably remember the episode of Friends when Monica and Ross and their mother are cleaning out her mother's apartment after her mother passes away, and Ross has to shimmy behind a dresser that somehow got wedged into a closet, and they find hundreds and hundreds of packages of Sweet and Low. I think any of us that grew up in those eras remember what it was to shove a couple extra packets of those pink, beautiful Sweet and Low packages into our purses, because God forbid we should ever want to have a cup of coffee and there not be Sweet and Low available, because we would never think of using sugar back then. Those were also the times that diet soda came on the scene. We called it pop. I'm from Illinois. So I grew up calling it pop. It wasn't soda until I moved to California. And so a lot of diet pop was consumed in my day in the form of Tab and Fresca and was it Shasta, which was sort of an economy brand, but they had a lot of weird flavors like black cherry soda that would be used in recipes. I think I've shared with you before, one of the Weight Watchers recipes that my mom would make would be baked apples. And so she would core the apple. I don't know, there would be something stuffed into the apple, maybe a few raisins, whatever it was. It couldn't have a lot of calories, but I do want to say there may have been a few raisins and a nut or two, but very few. And then the core of the apple was filled with diet black cherry soda to sweeten it and give it flavor. So back then we were looking for food substitutes that had been engineered by scientists. We thought this was all the rage. And how cool that was, that we could have things that tasted like other things that had no calories. I look back now and I don't know, it just makes me laugh. So I went to Weight Watchers for the first time when I was 7. Back then, Weight Watchers was hardcore. I just went back and looked. So Jean Neiditz founded Weight Watchers in 1963. So when I first went, it would have still been in the early years. And seriously, it was hardcore. Part of the Weight Watchers program was you had to eat fish 5 or more times a week. You had to eat liver once a week, which was not a hardship for me because growing up Jewish, I grew up with chopped liver. But I realize now for many people, liver is a trauma food, right? It's like, ugh. So, but you had to eat liver once a week because they wanted you to get in your iron. This is before we knew much more about nutrition than we know much more now than we used to. And as a kid on Weight Watchers, I had to have, I think, 5 glasses of milk a day, something like that, 5 servings of milk. And so Weight Watchers and the diet culture was all about making imitation forms of the foods that we could not have. And we would try to fool ourselves into believing that these were real food. So to help us walk down memory lane, if we can call it that, I have actually purchased a few dietetic recipe books from that era off of eBay that we are going to go through together. And I thought we could have some fun with this. The first one I want to share with you is one I actually shared in another podcast, but it is worthy of repetition. It is from the Feast Upon Cookbook by the Temple Judea Sisterhood. And they are in Manhasset, New York. And as best as I can tell, this book is from probably the 60s or 70s. And again, these kinds of recipe books were compilations from the women in the sisterhood. So these aren't necessarily a chef's version of a recipe. These were what the women were making in their own home, and they would trade recipes and compile them into these cookbooks. But this so far is my favorite and wins the prize. This is Diet Apple Pie. And there are no air quotes here. This is what they are calling it, Diet Apple Pie, with no crust, underlined, no crust. Put in a pie pan or square pan 4 apples, peeled, cored, and sliced. Well, so far that would make sense, but here's where it gets interesting. Dissolve 1 envelope of Knox gelatin in 8 ounces of Fresca. So, gelatin factors into many of these recipes. Gelatin seemed to be the wonder food of dietetic cooking back then. And Fresca was a wondrous beverage that was grapefruit flavored and artificially sweetened. I drank many a bottle of Fresca in my day. So you dissolve the gelatin in the Fresca and pour it over the apples. You sprinkle with a mixture of diet sugar, aka likely sweet and low, and cinnamon on top, and bake at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. Now, I never had this, but this certainly could have been in rotation in our home for me. Now, it's important to note that my father, brother, and sister got to have regular food. My mother and I would have been eating the Fresca pie. My husband and I are toying around with the idea of creating a TikTok channel where the content would be a little different. And I don't know, I have a vision of making these recipes. You know, part dietetic horror and joy and laughter all at the same time. So that is the diet apple pie that got this whole thread started for me. And, you know, before we go much further, I just want to say that I love my mom, and please do not judge her for feeding me this way, because this is what we thought was good and healthy back then. right? My mom was doing her best to take good care of me. And so I really am sharing this with you with a lightness of spirit. You know, we can't judge harshly the way we used to be based on the information that we had at the time, right? So back then we thought Fresca and diet black cherry soda poured over an apple was good food. And everyone was doing their best. So, you know, when you, what is it that Maya Angelou says? When you know better, you do better. So lightness of spirit and loving on my mom because this was a mystery she was seeking to unravel, right? She fed all three of us kids the same, and yet I was the one who had the extra weight. And let me tell you, it is 50 something years later, and it is still a mystery that the medical community is doing their best to unravel. It's not what we thought it was, right? It's not just don't give Laurel sugar and she will be thin like the other children. And she will be able to shimmy up that frickin' rope at the president's physical fitness test when that rope was dangling from the ceiling of the gymnasium, right? It's like, what did I need to do to be average or normal or whatever that is? But I was going to be me, like you're going to be you. We are who we are. And so I have so much love and compassion for those times. So I found a treasure of a book I have to share with you. And if you want your own copy, because maybe you will, because it'll make you laugh, it is available on Amazon and eBay inexpensively. And this book is called Laugh Your Calories Away, Sweet and Low All-Star Recipes by Joey Adams, who was a comedian at the time. So this book was published in 1970 by Sweet and Low's parent company. Again, I don't believe it is still in publication, but there are lots of used copies out there. And they have recipes from all of these different stars from the 70s, including, I'll go down the list, Zsa Zsa Gabor, and Zsa Zsa gives an apple turnover recipe with Sweet and Low. And I am positive none of these celebrities actually gave these recipes. I'm sure Sweet and Low's test kitchen came up with these recipes and then assigned them to the celebrities. I don't have proof of that. I'm just pretty sure that's what happened. Jackie Mason's breakfast pancakes, Phyllis Diller's tea muffins, Barbara Walters' sweet rolls. And let's see, I won't give you all the recipes yet, but we'll say Angie Dickinson is in here, Jacqueline Suzanne, Louis Armstrong, Alan Alda. Let's see, who else do we have? We have Ed Sullivan, Rudy Valley. How awesome is this? Robert Alda, so Alan Alda's father, Maury Amsterdam, right? Who doesn't love him from Dick Van Dyke? Burt Bacharach, Julie Newmar, right? Oh, yeah, as Catwoman, Julie Newmar was awesome. Well, she was Batgirl. No? Catwoman. No, I think Julie Newmar was Catwoman. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm getting my Batman references confused. I'm not going to go Google it, though, so you'll just have to forgive me. All I know is Julie Newmar was smoking hot and awesome in Batman. Jack Benny, Joe Garagiola, Red Buttons. But wait, there's more. I must flip the page. Joey Heatherton, Mickey Spillane, Soupy Sales. So anyone who grew up with 1970s game shows, like Match Game, $10,000 Pyramid, Hollywood Squares, you remember Soupy Sales, right? Toady Fields, who was a comedian. Ava Gabor, so we have the Gabor sisters here. Burt Bacharach, Jackie Gleason, and something here called The Drinking Man's Diet from Jackie Gleason. I have no idea what that is. We'll have to look. But I think this first recipe really sums up with how we were eating these dietetic foods back in the 70s, and it's Zsa Zsa Gabor's apple turnover. So 2 thin slices of white bread, crusts removed, right? It's already not boding well. 1 apple peeled and sliced, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of water, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1 packet of sweetened low. So, roll bread slices thin with rolling pin. Cook remaining ingredients together over a low heat in covered saucepan until apple is tender, about 5 minutes. Place half of apple mixture on each slice of bread. Fold bread over diagonally to form a triangle. Moisten the edges of the bread and press sides of each turnover with fork. Bake 425 degrees for about 7 minutes or until turnovers are brown. So, if you've ever had a real bakery apple turnover, this is a pale imitation, but it would have been something that delighted me in my childhood Weight Watchers days. I would have been like, ooh, yay, I get to have a turnover. Okay, so this next one also, I will tell you the recipe we used, which was not exactly this one. Oh, no, it is. I think I had a version of this. I think Weight Watchers circulated this recipe back then. This is being called Jackie Mason's Breakfast Pancakes. So 1 slice of enriched white bread, aka Wonder Bread, probably, 1/4 cup of liquid skim milk. Skim milk was a big thing. Now, in other parts of the country, it is called non-fat milk. Because God forbid there was any percent of fat, milk fat in your milk. So I only drank skim milk growing up. 1 egg, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 2 packets of sweetened low. So we're going to make this very sweet. And you put all of the ingredients in a blender. And then you fry it in a skillet or Teflon pan. Again, Teflon was fairly new back then, so it had to be called out because you would not want to use any butter because butter had calories. So you would have to use a Teflon pan, or if Pam was on the market at that point, you would spray it with Pam, because never, ever, ever would you use extra butter or oil to make your food back then. And so you blend the Wonder Bread with skim milk and an egg and vanilla and sweetened low. You blend that in the blender to make a batter, and then you fry it in a Teflon pan or Pammed pan. And then you serve it with dietetic pancake syrup because, oh no, I'm sure you didn't think you were getting actual syrup. No. Not if you're going to all the trouble of having your Wonder Bread skim milk sweetened low pancake. Now, I have to tell you, I had a lot of those pancakes in the day, and here it says different variations. You can add 1 thinly sliced apple. What I had were blueberries. My mom had frozen blueberries, and she would put the frozen blueberries in the batter for me, and that would be my pancake. I loved it. Again, it's easy now to look back at these recipes and go, what were we thinking? But you know what? That's what we had available. Now you go to the market and there's the Kodiak protein pancakes, and we have all different ways of looking at food and eating and nutrition these days. There used to be a dish I would always make, which would be, I would get and this was as an adult, this would have easily, I would have eaten this into my 20s and 30s. I would get the thin sliced bread. I mean, I did not start buying regularly sliced bread until I was in my 40s, I don't think. I always would buy the thin sliced bread, which was typically 45 calories a slice and made with air, a lot of air and a little bit of wheat. And I would take an egg and a little bit of skim milk, again, non-fat milk. I did not start, and just so you know, I am somebody who consumes dairy. I did not start buying 1% or 2% milk until I was, again, in my 40s or 50s even. So non-fat milk, a splash of vanilla, a packet of whatever artificial sweetener I was using at the time. It could have been Sweet and Low, probably Sweet and Low back then, because I don't think Splenda was on the market at that point. And I would make a batter and I would make French toast out of my diet bread, which was an okay meal, right? I had an egg, I had dairy, I had some bread, and of course the sugar-free syrup. So my whole life had been making accommodations for this way of eating. You know, having imitation kinds of food that would get me there. I just find it fascinating. These days, for instance, I still like cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is a big food back then. Okay, wait. Sorry. I just had spontaneous laughter boiling up because I just remembered one of the foods we used to eat. And I don't know that I'll find it in any of these cookbooks. But if you are in my age group and you Weight Watchered, you will remember this. It was the Weight Watchers breakfast cheese Danish. Okay, hang in with me. You take 2 pieces of your diet bread, again, thinly sliced, right? You lightly toast it. And then you take like a 1/4 cup of non-fat cottage cheese, no fat for you, no fat in anything, non-fat cottage cheese, sweetened with your Sweet and Low and maybe some sugar-free jam and some cinnamon, no sugar. And then you put the cottage cheese on the toast and put it back in the toaster oven so that the cottage cheese, it doesn't really melt. It just gets warm. And that was your breakfast cheese Danish. I had many a breakfast cheese Danish a la Weight Watchers in my day. And so you would think I would have bad feelings about cottage cheese because of how much of it I had to consume throughout my various stages of dieting. But I actually like cottage cheese. But I only eat full-fat cottage cheese now. It's not really full fat, it's 4% fat. But it's a good source of protein, and I really enjoy it with fruit. I also... One of my lunches during, this would have been when I first started working, because I remember going to the TV station when I was 21 years old, and this would be one of my lunches. Again, I was not on Weight Watchers at this time. I was on something called Diet Workshop, which was similar to Weight Watchers. And so I would get to have, I think maybe only 1/2 cup of cottage cheese, maybe a cup. It wasn't much cottage cheese. And you put in a little bit of Cool Whip, not much. I don't think they had sugar-free Cool Whip then, so I think this would have been the full-blown Cool Whip, but just like a spoonful. And then I would take some of the powdered sugar-free flavored Jell-O, like strawberry or cherry, and put some of the powdered Jell-O into my cottage cheese concoction and some sliced strawberries. and mix it up. And it tasted like a dessert to me. And that was my lunch for many a day. I would always get hungry 2 hours later, of course, because it wasn't enough food. But I ate from it ate from the wellspring of cottage cheese many times. And I still eat it. I do enjoy it now. But I only enjoy the one that has the fat in it. I don't see the point in the other one. Okay, let's see what else I can find. Okay, here's one. I've never had it, but I'm sure we would have had we known about this recipe, which reminds me of my wonderful cheese Danish recipe that I just shared with you. Okay, this is Earl Wilson, and I will say I'm not sure who Earl Wilson is, but based on his little snippet here, it sounds like he's a comedian. So my apologies to Mr. Wilson. I don't know. I wish I knew more about him, but he is assigned the recipe for strawberry cheesecake. So 1.5 cups of cottage cheese. So cottage cheese and gelatin were huge in the diet culture back then. So 1.5 cups of cottage cheese, 3 eggs, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract, 4.5 packets of Sweet and Low, and strawberries. Cream the cottage cheese by putting it through a sieve and then beating it with a rotary beater or use a blender. That's what we would have done. We would have put it in a blender. Beat in eggs, salt, almond extract, and Sweet and Low. Pour into buttered, just lightly, no butter for you, just lightly, a 9-inch layer pan, and bake it in a moderate oven, 350 degrees, 20 to 25 minutes. Cool, and then garnish with fresh strawberries sprinkled with Sweet and Low. Don't be disappointed when the cake comes out of the oven rather flat. It'll taste good anyway. Serves 4. Okay, and then we're going to go over to William B. Williams, who is a radio commentator. And I don't know, this one just brought back memories for me. So this is a milkshake. I had many a fake milkshake in my day. Okay, 1/3 cup of skim milk powder. Oh my God, I think we used this. All right, 3/4 cup of water, Sweet and Low to taste, 1 capful of vanilla extract, and 1/2 teaspoon of instant coffee, 4 ice cubes. Place in blender on low or whip and speed until homogenized. You know, I seem to recall my mom would make me these kinds of shakes. We really did try to be very inventive in the day. In hindsight, everything always looks different, right? When you can look back and connect the dots. But there was this mistrust of food that was happening back then. And so sugar was the enemy and fat was the enemy. And so we were looking for ways to shift how we were eating. And it's interesting because I think we still do that now, right? If you look at all the keto recipes, and I mean, I make protein ice cream in my Ninja Creamy because I would not ever eat regular ice cream anymore. And that's not, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't eat sugar anymore, not to deprive myself, but because I have a very addictive relationship with it. I can't just eat a little bit of sugar. And I'm talking about refined sugar here. So, the really good stuff, the, Halloween candy kind of stuff. I just, because I either can have no sugar or I can have all the sugar. And so I actually went off sugar in August of 2019. And so it's not that I rely heavily on artificial sweeteners in the same way that I did back then. But I I like to eat foods that are naturally sweet. I think that's one of the reasons that I am so in love with fruit when it's in season, right? It's so sweet. Right now, my favorite grapes are in season, and they are the autumn crisp green grapes, and they are like eating a sugar bowl, and I love them. And so it's interesting how it's evolved over the years. And I do still do things, and it cracks me up that it's a carryover. If you are someone who has a Ninja Creamy or follows Ninja Creamy TikTok, a lot of people in the bariatric community use powdered sugar-free Jell-O to flavor our ice cream. So a lot of these behaviors or adaptations are still in play. I have a whole cupboard full of different flavors of sugar-free Jell-O pudding that I use to flavor my overnight oats, that I use to flavor our Ninja Creamy ice cream concoctions. So as much as I'm laughing at how we used to make these dishes back then, a lot of these adaptations are still in play in my life. Thank goodness for food science, right? Yes, I eat healthy. Most of the food that I eat is whole food. I have a giant salad for lunch every day. I eat lots of fruit and veggies and good protein sources. But I am still a girl who loves chocolate ice cream, that I cannot eat real chocolate ice cream, the kind that you would get at Haagen-Dazs or Ben & Jerry's. So I make up my concoction of chocolate ice cream that works for me, which in theory is no different than the Wonder Bread blender pancake I had for many a breakfast as a child. It just doesn't feel as dramatic, I guess, now. I guess it's what you're used to, right? Like, we thought we were geniuses back then. I could have a pancake. How wonderful was that? Right? I could have a cheese Danish, an imitation of one, but it could be called a cheese Danish. How wonderful was that? I have really spent my life seeking adaptations to food to allow me to eat what I want to eat. And I guess that still happens, but it's a slippery slope, I will say. There are many different kinds of keto chocolate out there that I do not eat because I am terrified that if that becomes my new normal, I am just a bite away from, going into See's Candy and saying, give me one of everything. Honest to God, when I get to heaven, I'm going to have a talk with God about why it was set up that things like cake and cookies and candy were invented on the planet, and I could not eat all of it all the time and still be healthy. But I'm still here in a body, doing my best to be in a place of well-being and health and joy in this beautiful body of mine, that I still feed cottage cheese because I now have come to enjoy it, that I will make my protein ice cream with my sugar-free Jell-O, putting powder in it to sate my desire for ice cream, that I put a little bit of it in my overnight oats that I love to eat as a little bit of a snack during the day. So here's to our relationship with food, to all of the beliefs that we adopted throughout our lives, the tricks we learned, the adaptations we made, the stories we told ourselves, the stories we inherited from our parents and our grandparents. And here's to finding laughter and joy in all of it. Listen, we live in a time where we no longer have to be hunters and gatherers for the most part, right? You go, at least here in the US, I want to also acknowledge that it's a privilege the way I live, that I can go into a supermarket and there's lots of options for me. So I thank God for the abundance that I have the opportunity to experience, because I acknowledge that is not available to everyone. So here's to the diets of the 70s. Here's to those pink, lovely little packages of Sweet and Low that could be found at the bottom of all of our moms and grandmothers' purses, right? There would be like a Sucrets box, and remember Sucrets? A Sucrets box and some Sweet and Low and a piece of Kleenex. So here's to our memories that we get to share together, and thank you for letting me share some of mine. I love you so much, and I so appreciate our time together. So, my beautiful friend, you rest well. I send you blessings of love. I send you sparks of magic, and I send you gratitude from my heart to yours. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being you. You rest well, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.